Okay, thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off to get things started. Because again, this is our kind of ad hoc emergency S&A committee for the summer. We don't have the normal kind of setup of roles, and we have a smaller group. We actually do have all of the S&A members here, so thank you all. I will kind of move us through the agenda of things, but before we do, I'll give an overview of kind of what you all can expect under the advisor report. But I'm going to have us kind of move through the different agenda items. And so you all should have had the agenda sent out to you via email. And so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. And I'm going to go through and do roll call and attendance. And since I can see you all kind of just do the roll call from there. And so Alice Williams is present. Jared Osborne is present. Jake Robinson is present. Nicholas Villa is present. Xander Johnson is present. Those are all of our voting members, as well as myself as the advisor, Aaron Sargent as our financial advisor, and Mia Young as our administrative assistant are all present. And then we also have guests present from ACW who are here in the gallery as well. And so they may chime in as we jump in there on that. So we have a quorum. So thank you all for being here as we move through this. At this point, I do need to entertain a motion to approve the agenda. There is one item that I'm going to ask that's been asked for an amendment on it. Under the new business supplemental funding requests, we're actually going to move 2402 to present first, and I'll give kind of the rationale when we get to that. Got notice from our Senate Speaker. So we're going to swap those on the agenda. So 2402 will go present first, and then 2401 will present after. But with that, can I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to approve the previous or the amended agenda.
Thank you. Motion by Alice. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jared. Seeing no discussion, we'll go ahead and just go into vote. All those in favor, you can say aye or raise your electronic hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. That is all of the votes. So motion passes. Agenda's approved. We're going to segue into approval of the minutes from last May. Again, I apologize about sending that in the initial email, but send it in the follow-up email. If you all could take a minute just to, hopefully you've already had a chance to look over it. But if there's any adjustments or changes to it, please let us know. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from May 25th as well.
Point of order, why are we always approving minutes? Why not seconds and hours?
That's a really great question, Jared. I think that would be way too complicated. So we're following our procedures and policies.
I even prefaced that with Robert's Rules of Order. Thank you.
You did. You did.
The minutes look good to me. I'm
okay.
Happy to make a motion to approve them.
Great. Motion by Alice. Is there a second? Second by Xander, I believe. All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes? 1, 2, 3. Any opposed? You can put your hands down. Any abstentions? 2 of you that did not vote on it. We have a quorum though, so 3 votes in favor, so the motion passes. Minutes have been approved. Thank you all. But we will try and make sure we're voting as things come up. We're going to go ahead and move into reports, advisor reports. And so I do have a couple of reports to officially provide update from some things from spring quarter, just so the sake that it's on the record. And then we'll give kind of an overview, a little bit of refresher from training, but also since this is the first time you are meeting, of kind of what the process looks like for the supplemental funding. So the report updates I have are all things that the S&A committee had recommended and put forward last year that had gone up to the administration, and actually most of them had gone up to the Board of Trustees during our summer meeting. And so do want to report back that the Board of Trustees did approve the S&A fee increase request that was brought forward by the committee and by ACWU. Also, there was a whole series, if you all recall, of base funding allocation adjustments. Some of those were the realigning of the sub fee and the S&A fee, and some of them were the adjustments that were presented about ASCWU. Those were also approved by the Board of Trustees. And then our two supplemental funding requests, one of them, and I can't remember which department, so Ms. Quibb is one of our student media departments that had submitted a supplemental request, and then the publicity supplemental request, both that were recommended by the committee, were approved by the CFO, Joel Clucking, on that side. So all of those have moved forward. There was nothing that was pushed back or any questions on that end. So just want to share that officially. The other part for me, one, welcome to the new fall quarter. I hope it's going well for everyone. Excited to have you all here. I do know, and it's something that I'll be working on with Nick here as well, that this again is the kind of the short-term S&A committee, but hopefully we'll be getting the permanent appointments approved by the ASCW exec board. And if there's any additional members as well, so that way we can get rolling beyond just these kind of ad hoc requests that have come up. So hopefully we'll get some updates on that soon. And then as we go into the supplemental requests, and for those of you who have been through this process before, this is a repeat, so I apologize. For those of you that this is new, the way that it'll work is when we get to that part on the agenda, I've sent the copies to you all is simply just the form that is requested to be submitted. And so you can see their supplemental funding form. Usually, and on these ones, you can see there's an attachment at the bottom to an additional document and materials. And so you can click that at the bottom of the document. However, all the requesters are given the opportunity to come and present to you all. They have 10 minutes to present any additional materials, supplemental, to go over the specific request itself to you all. We do time those on the side for the sake of brevity and to keep us on track. After the 10-minute presentation, it does open up immediately to 10 minutes of questions and answers, where you all as the committee members have the ability to ask questions. As we talked about in the training part, this is the important part where you want to make sure you're asking the questions or getting the information you need to make a decision on the request as it comes up. There may be things in there to where Aaron or myself will step in to say, provide some clarity or clarification. Otherwise, for the most part, the Q&A, as a reminder, is us asking questions of the presenters, not discussing and deliberating on the request itself. That is actually the next stage, which actually happens at our next meeting, and that's intentional since these are public meetings. They are recorded. So it provides the ability for any of the student body or any of the CW community who has feedback in support or in concern to be able to share that with us as part of public comment before you all deliberate and vote. And so I say all that because today will be presentation followed by question and answer. Next week's meeting will simply be, and you'll have time set aside for you all to deliberate on each request, talking about the pieces you're in favor of, or if you're not in favor of it, and then waiting for a motion to be made at that point. With that, though, I know we haven't gone into the specific request, but process of, does anyone have any questions? Alice?
Yeah, I'm looking at the agenda here, and it does say we're deliberating and voting on 2401 and 2402 today.
Oh, that should be, so thank you for catching that, Alice. So we should adjust that on the agenda. That is presentation, so that should say supplemental funding request presentation.
Okay.
So if we can adjust that in the minutes. Deliberation and voting is what next week's agenda says. This is what happens when I try and be ahead of the game and create two agendas to save myself time. The copy's over. So yes, thank you for catching that. Xander? Oh, I can't hear you, Xander. It shows you're unmuted, but there's no sound. Can't hear anything yet. I see your mouth moving though.
You might check your microphone source.
That's what I was
Sorry,
gonna
is
say.
this a little better?
Yep, I can hear
Okay.
you now.
That was very strange. So in Robert's Rules of Order, how does one, I suppose, someone made a point of order earlier. What does that mean? And then when you say raise your electronic hands, is that function right there where I hit the raise hand button?
Yes, it is. And so, Jared, did you want? I know you're the one who made the point of order. Did you want to answer that question?
I certainly can, but there are cheat sheets for Robert's Rules of Orders that have like a smaller version of them. I mean, most meetings you're only going to see like maybe 5 or 6 things that might be Robert's Rules of Order-y. But there's like 30 or 40 recognized, like common phrases that people can use, and it's stuff like if you ask for, to like table a motion, that is not like putting the motion off permanently. Or well, you can postpone it, and then there's tabling, and it's like it depends upon whether or not you want to put it off for later or if you just want to kill it. There's like different nuances to every phrase that you can use within the Robert's Rules of Order. For point
Well,
of
to answer your
order,
specific, oh, go ahead. Yep.
yeah, for point of order, it's essentially just seeing if the procedure is being followed correctly. Like if we were going to be debating something, but we hadn't made a motion to, like do something prior to that, a point of order would be, hey, we need to do this in the correct order. And then the point of order after that is actually what you would need to do. So it'd be like point of order, we need to have a second before we can actually vote on this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jared.
Nope, that's a great explanation on that. Yeah. So it's really if it's the to point out that you think we're not following the Robert's rules, or to question if that's the piece specific to the rules themselves.
I would like to point out.
Great question, Xander. And yes, when I'm asking for you all to vote, go ahead, Jared.
Xander did manage to second a motion with a non-functional microphone.
That's
so that
true.
Was great.
Very impressive on that end. When I do ask you all to vote, and again, there may be times, just for, again, point of clarification for you all, there may be times we ask for a roll call vote, which is when, and that can be if it's a pretty contentious or high level one, to where it will be I'll ask your name and you vote on record. Otherwise, the vote can simply be a raising of your hand physically, if your camera's on, virtually, or you can unmute and say aye within that, as long as I'm able to identify, or when we get into the regular year, when the chair is able to identify and process through that. So great. With that then, that's all the kind of report update I have. Aaron, I don't know if you have anything for the group. I see shaking of head. Jared, is there a question in response to what I just shared?
No, but something just occurred to me on why we use Robert's Rules of Order, which is probably an important topic for people who are not familiar with it. It's so that the minority is not overwhelmed by the majority. So you are able to raise, like this isn't correct, or we should do this, or I would like to have a discussion on this, or things like that, so that if you are in the minority of whatever opinion, you can still have your voice be heard.
No, that's a really great point, Jared. I appreciate that. We talked a little bit during the training, but we didn't go into that point. We talked about some of it also is the transparency aspect when we're voting and making sure things are being clear. But that's also a really important point, to make sure that all voices have the ability and the chance to be heard publicly. So with that, I'll pop over to you, Nick. I don't know if there's any reports from ASCW at this time.
Just a question for clarification. What exactly would I report, or is there like a criteria of stuff that I would report, or is it just everything?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So sometimes with this, and having been on this committee for a couple of years, really the person in your role, each one does it a little bit differently. This is the open part. If there's any big things that you'd like from ASCW as a exec board to make the S&A committee aware of, sometimes it can be, hey, we have this event coming up, or hey, you're going to see an initiative or the election happening, or looked for a fee increase. Sometimes it's key highlight pieces, just to, because again, this is a public meeting and a group of individuals who are obviously invested in the student experience and student activities. The other part could be if there's things really specific from ACW to S&A that you want to make sure they're aware of, or to ask for thought or feedback on in that context. So yeah.
Thanks for updates. One thing I do want to mention is that as the quarter is beginning to come about, we do have committees. So if you are interested, there's a broad spectrum of committees, 34, 35-ish committees. So if you are interested, you can definitely contact me and I can get you more information after this meeting. And I think that's a little bit up for updates so far.
Great. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. With that, we'll move on to communications received. And these, for the individuals who are new to this, these are official communications that would come in to the S&A committee, sometimes from administration, sometimes from funding units, sometimes from others. I have not received any communications, and these would typically come to either me or Aaron on our end, but also me on your end as well. Aaron, have you received any communications? I'm assuming not, but okay, great. No communications received. With that, we'll open it to first call for public comment. Is there any public comment? Great, seeing none. We'll go ahead and segue into new business, supplemental funding request presentations, as it has been corrected. And we'll go ahead and start with funding request 2402 ACW office furniture. And so, Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you. I don't know if others are also presenting or here in support, but I'll turn it over so you have the ability. I'm going to make it so you can share your screen if you have anything you want to share on there. Let me know if it's good. But again, you have 10 minutes to present. If you get close on time, I'll kind of signal you and let you know, and then we'll go into questions. But go ahead.
Can y'all go ahead and see my screen, right? Or
Yeah, we see it.
cool. Okay. So just a little bit of background on this proposal. We're requesting the purchase amount of the 15 chairs as well as the 4 cubbies. And the last year's board did approve this purchase for the 15 chairs and the 4 cubbies. And one of the reasons that they were not purchased last year is because of some supporting staff transition, as well as causing delays. And due to some deadlines, we weren't able to purchase this furniture. But another aspect of this is the 4 cubbies and the 4 chairs were supposed to support our staff, administrative staff, along the purchase of computers. And the idea of that was to make it more efficient and more comfortable for our staff to better support students around campus. And the board of directors of last year knew they were going to have a remaining sweeping balance of about $89,112.44. And so that is why they were purchasing the computers and the furniture for the next year's board. And here are some of the more specific furniture details. It goes really into detail of what the parts are of the chairs as well as the cubbies. And the total cost of the furniture would be $15,250.67. I do know our proposal is $16,225. The reason being is we wanted a little bit of a buffer just in case the quote that we do have at the moment changes. And that's a little context. Is there any questions that I can answer? Anything, concerns?
Okay. So thank you, Nick. So now the way that work is, again, you all can raise hands and I'll call on you to ask questions. Again, is there relevant and specific to the request it is on here? Nick, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to keep sharing your screen just in case someone asks to look at anything that you have on there, but then afterwards I'll have you stop sharing. So
Okay.
With that though, go ahead, Jared.
Hey Nick, so you zoomed through that pretty quickly. Do you have a more itemized version of exactly what the costs are here? Because
do.
you have a lumped version of the chairs and tables and all that together, and I would like to see, kind of more of a detailed breakout of that.
I believe that's in their request. If I'm looking at the right one.
If you guys
Yeah.
could see the screen as well, this is
Oh.
the we also got as well. So we go ahead and go to the very top of this. And so the breakdown is a little bit complicated. It's broken into parts of the chairs rather than the chairs themselves. And I'm just going to go through it real quick. Let me know if you have any questions or like me to slow down.
Yeah, slow down just a little bit. Nick, are there any sourcing guidelines for places you can or can't get furniture for, or is this just the one you guys have selected?
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Are there any sourcing guidelines for how you are procuring the furniture? As in, can you go to anybody, or are there specific contractors with specific guidelines that you have to use?
I believe there is specific guidelines that we have to proceed with.
Nick, are you okay if I jump in and answer this question? Yeah. Jared, I can absolutely answer that one just from a process part, and Aaron can jump in as well from a larger part. But one, I also do want to make sure, I know I shared this in our training pieces, but also for you all, happy to answer information. But as a reminder, I'm the advisor of the S&A Committee and the advisor to ASCWU. So I can give information, but I don't want to be perceived as influencing or biasing at all. There are definitely, from a procurement standpoint, Jared, we have specific contractors who we have the ability to contract with, especially if there's a certain price point. After a certain price point, we have to go out to bid to open it up to other entities and areas. Open Square, who's the one that's on here, is one of the university's preferred vendors that we would have to go through. But there were other options looked at, and this was the one price-wise that was the most that was approved. I will also share on this, and part of why Nick had put in there, the quotes that we get are only good for 30 days. And then the price almost always goes up after the 30-day point. So that's part of also a little bit on here where you'll see this is actually a little bit more than, I mean, a couple thousand more than what that quote was from when the initial plan to order these in spring quarter was. And it came up. So Aaron, is there anything in terms of the procurement and when we go through outside vendors that maybe I missed or would be helpful?
No, I think that is pretty much answers the question as far as are there other options? Like we wouldn't go through sort of the big box online shopping for this kind of a purchase. This would be through the contract that's established in the purchasing office.
And for context, the reason why I asked that is because if we're in a budget crisis, shaving pennies here and there is always important.
Nope, that's appreciated. Xander, you had a question?
Yeah, so am I audible okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Fantastic. So I understand that the specific breakdown, the sort of itemized list of the costs is for parts specifically. And I understand there are 4 sort of workstation cubbies being purchased, but how many chairs themselves are being purchased? Because I'm seeing some very high quantity numbers here, and I'm slightly confused.
Yeah, for a little bit more context. So there's going to be 4 specific chairs for the cubbies themselves, as well as replacing some old chairs that we have in our ASUW office. And that is why there's a little bit more than before.
Alrighty, excellent. Thank you.
Sandra, do you still have a question? Your hand
No,
was still
it's.
up. Okay, you're
it-
good.
I'm sorry, I do not know how this hand raising thing works.
Nope.
There we go.
There you go. You got it. I didn't want to ignore you and assume that you had already asked it, so I wanted to check.
Any other questions I can answer, concerns?
And this is just a point of information to advise you all, because again, this is the first time many of you have done this. Definitely look through, and as you're looking at the request, if there is information you feel you need to be able to make an informed decision on whether to fund this or not, or at a different amount, we definitely want to make sure we ask that, since this is the time period. So. Yeah, Xander.
So I understand that you stated that the amount requested was I think maybe 1,000 or 2,000 more than what was quoted. And you had mentioned previously that that was because you foresaw the rate changing. I understand if you don't know the answer to this question, but what do you think we can do to potentially avoid that sort of happening?
So the reason that the rate changed was because of the 30-day buffer of when they had to redo the quote. And so recently we just got the quote after we made the proposal. And so a little bit before that, we didn't have that 30-day notice. So we were just unsure if that quote was going to be a lot more, a little bit more. So we just put a 10% buffer on the original quote we had, and just to have a little bit of buffer room. So when that quote did come in, we would have enough within our proposal.
Excellent.
And just for the context here, the quote that came, and again, they were kind of estimating because they had to submit it before we'd gotten the updated quote. We received this quote on September 6th. So assuming things move forward, if you all were to move forward on that, as long as we were able to make contact with the company, if it's approved prior to that 30 days, which there should be time with our voting stuff, then there shouldn't be an increase and it would be fine. It would just be if it goes beyond that, it might be an increase again. So.
Joey, may I add something as well?
Yeah, sure, Malik.
Hey, thank you so much. Hi, y'all. My name is Malik. I go by any and all pronouns. Keep it fun, keep it fresh. I'm the ASCW president. So just to kind of give a little bit more information, to kind of speak on the need for these things. Right now, we are going to have about 36 people employed in the office, all including us board members, our senators, and all of our office staff there. So right now, as the office is, we only have workstations for maybe half of that number. So a lot of our senators and our office staff don't always have just an individual workspace that they can be at. They often have to find themselves at just like kind of piled up at like a common table, or they have to find some sort of space elsewhere on campus to do their work. So having these 4 individual workstations and the new chairs for the conference room, it'll just kind of help make that work a little bit more efficient, and kind of be able to provide people those resources that they need to kind of just carry out their work a little more easily. So just so y'all know, right now the resources we have are, we're making it work, but we only have about half of the individual resources available to everybody. to everybody. So
Thank you, Malik. Any other questions from the committee for our presenters? Great, seeing none. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Malik, for sharing as well. Again, as you both know, but we will be voting on this next week and deliberating, so appreciate it. If you could stop sharing the screen now, Nick, that'd be awesome. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next supplemental funding request, 2401, the ACW Student Senate. Charles, I see you're signed in. Are you able to hear us and join us for the presentation?
Yes.
Awesome, I can hear you. So, and I know you would come in a little bit after this, but just for point of information, you have 10 minutes to present any information you would like, all the details and things. The committee has received the funding request form that was submitted, and it has that supplemental document attached as well. But I'll give you 10 minutes. If you get close on time, I'll kind of signal and let you know. But then afterwards, we'll open it up to questions from the committee. So take it away.
Joey, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you able to share your screen with the document that I had submitted with my request?
Yes, let me pull it up to share my screen for you. One sec. If you want to
Thank you. So sorry.
talk. Oh, no, you're good.
I would like to start off by apologizing to everyone. I do not have any PowerPoint or materials to share with you. I was on my way into my office earlier to put all that together for you all when my car broke down. And so I've been dealing with that for the past 2.5 hours. So I don't have any materials. But once that document is pulled up by Joey, I can kind of talk about the request and the need for it. So currently, just some history. Last year, our previous Vice President, Brady Smith, had came and presented to S&A to have the Senate budget reallocated before there was 2 allocations that needed to be done. So previously, we were using the Senate budget for room reservations and paying our staff and everything, which apparently was not part of the reallocation originally when the Senate became Student Senate instead of Student Academic Senate. And so those funds had to be reallocated for the proper use that they were being used for now. We also needed the budget reallocated for a larger amount that would account for increase in wages, as well as goods and services, programming, all of that, since we didn't actually have a goods and services budget or a programming budget. However, we did require every senator to carry out an event that happened every year for student engagement purposes. So as you all saw, I did ask for a supplemental funding request of $22,000. As you see, the first number I put in there on subsection 3 of that is that 9,000 of that would go towards wages. Currently, our budget does not, Currently, our budget does not account for our wages. When the reallocation last year was done, the calculations that were carried out didn't account for the fact that we were lacking about 5 senator positions being filled throughout the year. So they accounted for much less than what our budget was actually needing. So our current reallocation lacks about $9,000 and is operating at a deficit currently. So without the reallocation, we wouldn't be able to pay our staff properly for the entire year. And those costs would most likely be eaten up by our BOD budget. We also are requesting $2,000 for goods and services. Of course, uniforms, name tags, nameplates, because we do want all of our Senate to be recognizable by the student body, especially when they're attending events and such, so that students are aware of who their student representatives are and can easily locate them in times of need or just wanting to talk, making sure that they're accessible. We also have about $3,000 in room reservations throughout the year. I was able to get those numbers from Bonnie in scheduling recently, and so that $3,000 for services would go towards room reservations and making sure that our Senate has a place to meet. And then our office supplies is just things such as padfolios, pens, legal pads, stuff like that, so that our senators have the materials necessary to be able to carry out their positions. And $7,250 for programming. So like I mentioned earlier, every senator is expected to carry out an event every year. So we wanted to make sure that they actually had the funding to do so. Previously, they were being required to do that, however, not being provided any funding, and were encouraged to partner with other offices on campus so that they could receive funding from them. However, being a senator myself, I felt it was kind of impossible almost to carry out an event when, of course, everything requires payment of some sort nowadays. So I wanted to make sure that at least our senators had a budget of about $250 to kind of start their event and get them off the ground. Last year, the BOD was kind enough to pay for some of the senators' events, so we were able to carry out things such as Bubble Trouble, which was an event where we rode around on a golf cart with a bubble machine and music, and students could find us during midterms and get a free bottle of bubbles so that they could kind of de-stress and take their mind off things with some childish fun. We also had an event such as Chalk and Talk. Chalk and Talk is an event that is actually going to be reoccurring throughout this year and is being ran by our Senator at Large, Matthew Worrell, who's also the Vice Speaker. And that was something we did last year where students could come and draw with chalk on the West Patio and kind of get to know our senators and just meet them in a more relaxed space. And we had quite a large turnout, which is why we decided that we would keep the event going. And then we had some other senators partner with different offices, such as Slice. So last year, our Senator at Large Jenkins, she partnered with Slice to do a sort of scavenger hunt event across campus with catering and equal opportunity drawings. So we've seen great turnout in the events we're doing. We just want to make sure that the senators have the budget necessary to actually get them off of the ground in cases when the BOD isn't as able to support us in the budget area. We also are requesting a budget of $300 or another programming portion of $3,500. And that would go towards general ASCW programming. So an example of this is Sweetie Day, which is an event we started up again last year. It was the first time we had carried out this event at CW, and I want to say about 50 years. And we saw quite a large turnout. We did spend quite a bit of money on it. And of course, the BOD was kind enough to partner with the Senate so this event could be carried out. But it's something we would like to keep happening every year. And so that budget would primarily go towards Sweetie Day. And it's part of our initiative to kind of make sure that the student body is aware of their representatives and knows what the Senate is and does, and kind of making us more visible to the student body. I think I covered most of the broken down pieces, but our senators are paid 5 hours a week. There is 14 of them that are paid 5 hours a week. Our vice speaker, who is by precedent a senator who is gets appointed as vice speaker, works 10 hours a week so they can go to meetings such as Faculty Senate with me and help with administrative work. And if I were to be gone, they would have to take over a lot of my duties during my absence. And so making sure they're able to be paid for that time. Having worked as a vice speaker in both my years as a senator, I can say that in the absence of your Senate speaker, you do end up working a lot more than what you're being paid for. So making sure they're being paid properly for all the work they're doing. And then I also hire 3 administrative assistants that work 10 hours each. So all of that money, that the majority of the budget goes towards salary and benefits. So that kind of breaks down the different positions and how many hours a week they're being paid for. And then we also wanted to work in the 20 hours of training that the staff do at the beginning of their term. This is 20 hours of training that both the administrative staff and the senators do. And when the calculations were done last year, that wasn't taken into account. So I wanted to make sure that it was accounted for when we went over when we came to you guys to ask for supplemental funding. I believe that's all that I have. Are there any questions for me?
Any questions from the committee? Thank you, Charles.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Xander, and then Jared.
So to be clear, essentially what kind of happened here is that you were allocated funds last year, or last academic year, and those funds weren't allocated entirely. And please let me know if I'm completely off base. And those funds were allocated in a way that didn't fit the needs of the budget. And so these funds are to fit the needs that kind of were and ended up falling by the wayside once the previous funds were adjusted to be used in the vein that the budget was intended to be used for. Do I have that right?
Kind of. So
Okay.
when Academic Senate was configured 3 years ago, the funds were originally supposed to be used for programming. However, we were not made aware of that, so we've been using them for wages. So last year, we came to S&A with two proposals. We came with them for a proposal to reallocate our budget so it could be used for wages, and then we also came with a budget reallocation request that would allow for all of the things I just read off. However, that reallocation request was done with incorrect calculations. And so it didn't take into account the vacancies we had throughout the year and left us with about a $22,000 deficit on our budget. So instead of getting more money, we ended up not having enough money to cover our wages and having essentially less money than what we initially had. And so that is kind of why I'm here today, to kind of ask for a supplemental funding that would allow us all the things that we originally asked for. And so the reason I'm asking for supplemental funding rather than an entire budget reallocation is because I feel that asking for a supplemental funding request allows us, the Senate, the opportunity to show all of you before you reallocate the budget again, that all this money is actually being used for the things it's intended to be used for, so that hopefully in the future we can come to you for a budget reallocation and be able to show you, like, yes, this is the money, this is where the money is going. Because I know that commonly a question that's asked in S&A, having watched the videos, is like, what is the proof? And so before I ask you guys to permanently reallocate my budget, I want to be able to show you that this is where this money is going. And I would have had the opportunity to do that already, except that our allocation last year was incorrectly calculated.
Excellent. Thank you for your clarification.
Of course.
Jared, I think you had your hand up for a split second and then went down, but I don't know. Did you have a question, Jared?
I did, but Xander beat me by just a second, and I didn't want to be like simultaneous hand raising. So, this particular proposal makes sense to me. I actually had a couple of things occur to me on the previous proposal. So if we could potentially return to that for a couple of minutes, because I see Nick is still here, that would be appreciated. But I actually don't have any other questions on this particular one, Ron.
We'll hold on that, Jared, and if you all would like to, we can definitely do that. Since I know Nick is here as part of the committee anyways, but yes, remind me before we segue after we close up on this one, and we can definitely bring back if everyone's comfortable with that. So any other questions for the ASCW Student Senate supplemental request?
Joey, I'm so sorry. May I add something?
You absolutely can.
Okay, thank you
recognize
so
Malik.
much. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, just a bit more testimony to this. I was also a senator last year, a senator at large, and I can definitely say that that funding was was very much needed. Like Charles said, like not having that funding for programming led to some pretty good collaboration with senators and other departments, which is wonderful. But I've found that some senators found it kind of difficult to just hold events and other initiatives that were solely Senate. And you know, while collaboration is wonderful and great, and we love partnering with people, kind of being able to have those specific things like Charles mentioned, Bubble Trouble, Sweetie Day, Chalk and Talk, having those things that are solely Senate was very empowering as a senator. So, you know, being able to host those different things, I think really elevates the work that our senators do. So this funding is very much needed. Yeah.
May I add on if that's all right?
Yes, you may, Charles. Thank you, Malik.
Also, just as Malik said, like it's empowering for the senators, and the Senate currently is aware that I'm here asking for this supplemental funding proposal, and they're extremely excited were they to get it. They've already started talking about how they can collaborate with one another to kind of mush their budgets together so they can create larger events. And so I just want to talk about how it creates a bond and a partnership between the senators themselves, right? Because as I stated previously, we'd be breaking it out into $250 increments per senator. And so they've already started collaborating on how they can make their events more successful by working together. And so just kind of putting that towards this is that it not only allows for an empowerment amongst the senators themselves, but as an office environment overall, and allowing the students to get to know their senators. And previously, when it came to goods and services or supplies, the BOD was lucky enough to have enough of their budget rollover that they could cover those things. However, with the budgets no longer rolling over, that's not something that the BOD might be able to cover all the time. And so making sure that the Senate is able to sustain itself is extremely important.
Thank you, Charles. Any questions for the Senate supplemental funding request? Great. Seeing none, we will deliberate and vote on this at next week's meeting. Thank you both. With that, yeah.
Were we gonna? I know Jared had a question for Nick.
That's what I was just going to segue into our official part. I mean, I know we're a little out of Robert's Rules of Orders. So I would entertain a motion if someone's willing to motion that we reopen up Q&A for supplemental funding request 2402.
I'd like to motion that we reopen Q&A for supplemental funding request 2402.
Thank you. Motion made by Xander. Is there a second?
I'd like to second that.
Second by Alice. Any discussion? Seeing
I mean,
none. Oh, go ahead, Alice.
pertaining, Nick's open to reopening this.
I see a nod for the recording's sake. Nick is nodding. All those in favor of the motion on hand, please say aye or indicate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. All in favor, motion passes. So we'll go ahead and jump back into and reopen up Q&A for the funding request 2402 ACW office furniture. Any questions? Jared, go ahead.
I can tell that you all saw this coming. Okay, so I have, I think, about 3 questions here. First off, why is this coming out of S&A? Why wouldn't this be coming out of a facilities or operational budget?
Would you like me to answer that, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jared, this actually comes out of all of our S&A funded units. Pay for them out of their budget pieces, or it's funded directly out of the S&A fund. The student union building itself is funded, and all the furniture in there comes through that. And so That's just the way that the budget pieces are broken down. If it didn't come from ASCWU, it'd be coming from the the S&A general fund to pay for it, because it is student furniture for the student union building, which is owned by the students. So they can't go and so to add on to that, the furniture that's bought with S&A money can't be reallocated and moved over to the accounting department later on to utilize. It stays within the S&A funded areas.
Okay, so to understand this, the issue is that because S&A is funding CIRC, and these are going in CIRC, so therefore they are S&A budget items.
And the ASCWU is an S&A funded program, and they're furniture for an S&A funded program. Yeah.
Okay. Second question, unless someone else would like to interrupt with a different question, so I could take turns rather than just monopolizing the conversation. So we have a lot of meeting spaces on campus in general. We have conference rooms, we have tables with them and chairs with them that, from my experience, are largely vacant throughout the day. Why can these spaces not be used? Why would we have to purchase essentially more chairs and more desks that could potentially remain vacant like these?
So the idea of, or Malik, did you want to answer? I believe the idea behind purchasing the chairs within this office space is so we can have a centralized space where our senators, where our staff, as well as students, have an opportunity to engage with us, as well as engage and have seating where they can engage. And instead of say like Samuelson and using that space. So just so we have a centralized space where students know where we're at, and they have somewhere to sit and somewhere where we can conversate with students and have meetings.
Charles, did you have a hand up to add to that answer? Or not?
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Did you say I could? Hello,
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Joey?
Yeah,
Oh,
he
you can
said,
hear me.
Hello, you can go ahead, Charles.
Okay. Jared, it sounds like part of your concern
Yes,
is
we
also
can hear you.
that. Okay. That part of your concern is that space won't be used. However, I can assure you that it is used every day. I actually have used it multiple times throughout the day for interviews and meetings, and it is a growing need. The workstations, especially, being that my office itself has 15 senators who are expected to hold their office hours and do their work within the ASCW office, and currently they don't have a space to work. And so it allows them to more efficiently do their job. And so the worry that those chairs and that those meeting spaces won't be used, I can assure you that they most definitely will.
I will let you all know that you have all frozen on my screen. So I apologize that I can't see anyone if they have a hand up.
Joey, can you hear us?
I can. So Malik, you can definitely jump in. I just didn't want
Okay.
anyone waiting on me.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Okay, yeah, just to also add and kind of address the second part of your question there, is, there's this space all around campus that isn't usually being used. Yeah, specifically with our senators, these senators so far with their office hours have kind of done in a way where a lot of them hold office hours at different spaces on campus. And we found that there are benefits to that, but we've also found that it makes it kind of difficult for students to know exactly where to find these senators when they need them, because everybody is so, nomadic in where they hold their office hours. So one of the pushes that the executive board has kind of wants to do this year is kind of try to bring people to the office itself and kind of make the office more accessible with all of our senators and staff and ESC representatives. So kind of having those workstations will give our senators, our staff, and our ESC reps the space that they need to do their work, and kind of be just a centralized space where students can find the representatives if they need to.
Okay, Those are good answers. My third kind of question, which is more of a follow-up to the second one, is are there adjacent conference rooms or other things that could be allocated for this purpose, where you could have a defined meeting place that you could have people go to, where it could be staffed by these people without the purchase of these chairs and tables?
If you all don't mind, I may answer that one, if that's okay, and chime in. So a little bit on this, Jared, is and I think I'm just going to say this for the sake also of the recording. These positions in these workstations are for paid student positions that work out of the office of ASCW's executive office. The only other spaces in the circuit, so the ASCW has that office space, that suite up on the second floor of the circ, and that's where these would be located. Any other spaces in the building are either office spaces for other departments or is space that has to be rented through scheduling and circ operations. And so not, it would have to be a pretty massive undertaking, which could be at the behest of S&A if you all would like to go through circ operations to reallocate a meeting room. To have it be a permanent ASCW office, but there's a massive process that goes through to be able to do that, since these are staff workstations that are being employed there.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question, Jared?
Yes, I definitely understand that, but I also don't have any information on the utilization percentage of these areas. And if we do have low utilization areas, I feel like it would be more advantageous for our budget to maybe go that direction, even if it is more onerous. So I'm basically looking for like, how much benefit do we get compared to maybe a cheaper or more bureaucratic option? Because I'm trying to find value.
I gotcha.
Here. And
and what I may add in here, oh, go ahead, Jared. Yep.
My fourth question, which is absolutely not a serious question, is why don't we just buy tatami mats? They're much cheaper.
I'm gonna answer the part you said before that last question. The other part, because I appreciate your thoughtfulness on the being mindful and responsible, not only fiscally, but with our space. One of the other things that I think, as we look at the conversation about is it more advantageous, is most of the spaces you're talking about that are available in the circ do not have workstations. So while they may have tables or things in there, they don't have computers or the setups of those. So to reallocate those, we'd have to also get the equipment for those and take those spaces offline. But that's a great question for circ operations that we can ask in terms of the usage of their rental spaces, and how frequently and how much those get used and what's the revenue parts on that. But in terms of using it for this need, this is the admin support for the ASCW office. So we'd have to move a lot of functions and get some other equipment as well, would be my answer wearing that hat. Xander, yeah.
I may be misunderstanding, but I want to be ensure that I am that I have everything right. So this is the Q&A section, and I cannot provide input on what another member of the committee says until our discussion section next week.
That's correct. Yep. This is really asking questions of the presenters, so you all have all the information available. Because next week when you're deliberating, again, the presenters aren't necessarily a part of that conversation. I know Nick's a part of our committee, but that's, as we talked about in training, where Nick would have to abstain from the discussion and the voting. So you want to make sure you have as much information as you can now during this part of it.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess my last thing would be if we could find out, like maybe email someone and figure out what the utilization percentage is and see if there is a plan B that we could do. That would be appreciated. It would definitely help with our deliberation discussion next week. But, there's some time to have that happen and, get a yes or no or maybe or something like that.
We could definitely put that. I'm typing this up on the side right now, and I know Mia's also typing the minutes, but to be clear, so I'm asking the right question, Jared, on there, is really what you're looking for is from the circ in terms of the spaces we have available. what is the utilization of those open meeting spaces? How frequently are those used, and what would be the feasibility of potentially converting one of those into usage for the ASCW office?
Correct, with enough, capacity for, for the needs that are that ASCU has. I wouldn't necessarily be saying like, let's split it up into 5 separate conference rooms where you have to figure out like which person is in what office, because that's also a big giant pain. But
Yeah.
I know that there are some fairly large
Yeah.
meeting rooms, and having people work, within relative close proximity could possibly be done within those spaces.
Yep, no, I'll put in
Yeah,
that request to Shuri. Oh, go ahead, Malik. Yep.
Oh yeah, if I may add something else as well. Yeah, I definitely excited to explore that conversation as well. Just to add a little bit more about why this particular route would be beneficial. A lot of our senators and ESC reps do a lot of their work on their own personal devices, which can, one, be difficult to create that kind of like balance between work life, everything, because your work is constantly on your personal device. Also, there's some important information that as we transition senators and ESC reps, there's information that can be on their personal devices that gets lost as we go through transitions, because people leave the office and then they still have all of the information on their own personal device, and we don't have any kind of way to transfer or protect that on our ASCWU devices. So we have computers in our office that we would put into these workstations that our staff, senators, and reps would be able to use. So all of their work would be able to be kept on ASCW devices, and our senators and such would be able to have their own personal devices solely for their academics, without having to carry a lot of that information all around with them, all around campus. So they would be a more centralized space just to have a lot of that work as well.
Okay. But the request is for tables and chairs, right? No devices are part of that. So where are the devices coming from if they're not using their personal devices?
Yeah, we have computers. We just don't have a space to have those computers.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
these workstations would serve as that space to put our computers in, and for our ESC reps and our senators to be able to use.
Yeah, that
And
makes
if
a
you
lot more
don't
sense.
mind, Malik and Jared, I mean, I'll add on a little bit to that. Just because I think that may have been in there. This was all part of the plan from last year's board to utilize. I mean, so they did put in the orders for the computers. The hard part and what happened, as Nick was alluding to, is there was an order for the furniture that was set to go in. However, due to some unforeseen staffing transition and absence of the person who was going to be processing it, that got delayed. And for those who are not aware, furniture orders at the university have to be done by April. If you don't have it and there's a deadline, those can't move forward until the next fiscal year, which is what happened in this situation. However, because we made the decision as S&A to roll back the remaining fund balance, that meant that money that was set aside to do it rolled back, which is why they're coming and asking now. It was all part of one plan to provide the equipment and those pieces. Half of it, though, just got stopped due to the absence, the timing of the requirement for furniture orders, and then the fund balance rolling back.
Yeah, I remember the request for the device funding from last year. But I think that makes sense. I just feel like we don't have redundant devices for people, which is why that makes sense. That's why I'm asking more about the spaces and the furniture aspect, because there is some redundancy that might be more efficiently used there. I just don't know if that's a thing that we can do and the feasibility of that, which is why I think we had that information next week. That's something we could discuss.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll be sending it out to Cherie Wilson, our Director of Student Union Operations. I'll wait till the morning to send it to her instead of right after the meeting. But we should ideally have that for sure next week, Jared.
Okay, that's it for me.
Any other questions for anyone on the funding request for ACW furniture? Great, seeing none. Again, we will deliberate and vote on this next week as things come up. So thank you all again. We'll go and move on to the agenda. We have no old business. So I'll open it up again for second call for public comment. Is there any public comment for the good of the team?
Can I just kindly say thank you to all our speakers today? And for
Absolutely.
after all our questions, just thank you.
It is much, much appreciated. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yeah, I appreciate all the clarifying questions.
Charles, go ahead.
Thank you all for letting me come and present to you all today. If you have any questions for me next week, I'll make sure to be here so that you can ask them. And again, I just hope that you all strongly consider both allocate supplemental funding requests, just because the need for them is extremely important, and I can't stress that enough. So.
Oh, you cut off at the very end, Charles, but I think we got the premise of it. We appreciate you all. Any other public comment? Great, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion from Xander. Do we have a second?
I second to be adjourned.
Second from Jared. Thank you, Jared. With that, all in favor of adjourning, please indicate. Great. And with that, we have a unanimous vote. Meeting is adjourned at 6:09 p.m. Thank you all very much. Good luck with the next week of classes, and we will reconvene next Thursday for our next meeting. So have a great evening all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.